Here goes Ramble number 5. Actually, I'm recording this a little earlier. While I'm sitting here, my car is warming up. Instead of Saturday, I'm recording on Friday to post on Saturday. I kind of want to do an update and then go from there. An update. This week was rough. In fact, in the middle of the week, I kind of took, I got the emergency work stuff done, and I took time off, basically rested up. It was bad. Basically, my sleep was down Monday, Tuesday, and then Wednesday was already the third day, and I was just completely, if I'm honest, just losing it. What could be causing it? I think it's just a combination of disturbed sleep because young kids, and then it's that whole thing of, I think I'm a special case. Like, for example, I could have taken precautions not to be in that situation, but I thought I got away with all those times. I think I'll be fine, and this time I was not fine. I simply need to go in a different room and just rest up, so that when we're up, it's just like if one's resting, the other one is up. So the way it was going is that we're both kind of up, me and my wife, and I have to have a schedule, can't stretch it, and that kind of really messed things up. And then in combination of that, I was lifting a lot. I was really trying to tighten up the diet. I mean, I was doing the shakes were helping me. FYI is I wasn't eating the most, the best diets, because just couldn't, so I was basically leaning on the shakes and the vitamins, and I think they're fantastic for that. If you're not eating that well, you gotta at least get your protein intake, you know what I mean, at least that. So it worked good, but I'm kind of starting fresh, sleeping in a different room, trying to rest up, and I'm going back to doing a little bit more whole. Another thing I adjusted is I actually, push presses and hybrid deadlifts are my favorite. They're not realistically the only exercises that I've seen carry over to everyday life. Actually, just completely improved it. It's the whole reminder of this is how you actually pick anything up properly. And it's close to what we in real life do. You pick things up and you put things overhead, you put things otherwhere, and most of the time you can't even activate your chest when you're putting anything away. It's all shoulder, triceps, and trunk support and leg support. So that's where the push press comes in, and the deadlift is the proper way to do it. Is you keep the trunk tight, and you let the glutes and the hamstring and the quads do the main lifting. Well, obviously the back is active, but it's stabilizing, keeping the bar close and so forth. No, you don't want it to be the main mover, and I love that. But the reality, when I combine them together, I push press first, then I finish with deadlift, I would get to clever programming where I do certain amount of deadlift, certain amount of presses, and lower the volume of. I lowered the volume of deadlift too much, and I had to raise it up. But I think what I have to do, since I'm a kid and everything, is and this is exactly what I did. I completely separate them together. There's a press day and there's a dead day. And I think, and I've done this before, I had energy, so I was like, why don't I do more and more, and then I'll beat myself up. So and I actually threw in some assistance exercises just to kind of still work the other movement, the muscles, without hitting the legs as hard. So for example, when I do the push presses, I'm going to do some chins. And when I do the deadlifts, I'm going to do some dips. And actually yesterday I was this is I kind of want to get my chest back, more of chest back. And so I was okay, I'm planning to do push presses, and I'm planning to do chins. I'm going to just throw in some dips too. I mean, I'm kind of throwing them back in the mix, so it's not like I'm going to super tire my body out or anything like that. Throw that back in the mix. And honestly, chins and dips in combo is easier on the body than just push presses. And the deadlift is more harder on the body than push presses. So this is where you see the whole combo and how I was able to wreck my body. But I think things that work need to stay, so that's where I'm gonna probably keep push presses and hybrid deadlift for the rest of my life. Hybrid is what I mean by that is there's a sumo stance and there's a conventional stance, and the one in between was basically like a squat stance. And I found that has carryover to both, and that's the most, I think, one of the most advantageous, like in terms of like if you're picking anything up in real life, you realistically want to use your hips more than your back. So you would kind of get it as close to your body and so forth. And I find the hybrid to be the perfect middle ground. That's why I call it the hybrid, not sumo, not necessarily conventional. And conventional just can't handle volume. The lower back just gets fatigued and you're done. While the hybrid kind of does it a little bit more balanced, where you're able to use more legs and grow those legs more. Most people that do that kind of programming, like conventional, they rely on the squat to build up the legs, and then the deadlift just anchors the trunk. That's all it really does. So basically, the driver is the squat. I kind of want my upper body, parts of my upper body, to be super strong. That's why I kind of prefer the hybrid version that I'm still deadlifting. That's why I do it. And I think it's a good moving pattern to learn. And like whenever you pick anything up, in everyday life, like the push press, you automatically think of, okay, I want to get this as close to my body as possible. I want to tighten my trunk, which means tighten the lats, chest, core, abs, everything. Tighten it down and flex the abs, just like I said. And then let the legs move it while the arms just assist. And that's the way you don't get hurt. That's the way you pick up heavy stuff often and it doesn't hurt you, and you can do it again and again and there's no problem. Alternative is like in the Ukrainian culture or Slavic, what's emphasized is trunk stiffness. Basically, they kind of is better than doing it with your arms, because your arm is the weakest link, right? Like curling everything, but they do it through basically abs, like trunk tightness, or they kind of rely on the core to do it while they round their back and so forth. And it's like a culture already in the Ukrainian culture. It's kind of dumb, if we're honest, because what you're doing actually is, you're helping out your lower back by having a tighter abdominal section, which is sit-ups and stuff like that. But you're kind of teaching yourself how to, when you pick up, that you're kind of picking everything up with your lower back. You're almost disengaging the legs. They just stand there, and you're actually doing everything with your back, lower back. But the proper way is actually trunk tightness, and you let the hips move, which means you hinge, you pick it up, which means your legs are doing it actually, while your lower back, your core, and your lats are just holding tight. And like when you're picking up from the ground, your lats are going to be active by just moving the bar closer to you. You're doing basically a row, partial row. So I think that, and then I find this actually in the Old Testament, Jacob, when he was wrestling with the angel dislocated his hip, not his stomach, not his core, because the reality is that's where the most strength is transferred. Legs are supposed to be strong. But okay, enough rambling about that. I want to tackle kind of more of something like Old Testament stuff. I was reading about Dinah or Dinah in the Old Testament, Jacob's or Israel's daughter, and how she went to town and she got raped and so forth, and it was kind of like a whole massacre. And then you read where it talks about in the law how if a girl gets raped, that the raper should pay like kind of like a penalty to the father, and he should marry her and never divorce her. He doesn't have the right to divorce her. for the rest of her life. And I heard even other people would say that, how is this fair? This is crazy. Like, what you're trying to say is you're trying to make the girl marry the rapist. And I think the misunderstanding with Old Testament, maybe I'll put a side note so you guys understand. We live in a different time. What I mean by that is we're like impoverished or so disconnected with how brutal and rough the nature is. And technology is saving our butts so much that a girl can survive basically on her own right now. Back in the day, it was not so. It just was not so. And if you were gonna have, like, let's say there's a girl that got raped, a lot of times the other men wouldn't want her anymore, like, to marry her, and she would be completely helpless. She would have nobody to support her as she gets older. So what happens is that she got raped, which is horrific. And if we're gonna follow our standard today, on top of all that, she doesn't get to survive. And this is where you kind of understand that the Old Testament law in a lot of areas was just salvaging situations. It's like, it's bad, it's terrible, but you at least, and it was preventative. So, like, okay, you can put categories on how there's the moral law, which is universal for every culture and so forth, right? There's law that God had specifically for Israel, because that was like kind of like his bride, right? And you could say there's other laws that are just salvaging laws, like this one. And there was laws that wanted to keep Israel like sacred or separate in other ways, because you know how it says the companion of fools corrupts. Like, when you go with a crowd of bad people, you will learn their ways. And what God wanted to do is actually protect Israel so they don't learn from any bad ways, to kind of so a lot of the laws were just there just to make them different, like you could say shrimp and all the other stuff. The point of the laws, and I guess you could say, could have put a commentary towards now, this is the reason why we're allowed to eat all those things like pork and stuff like that, is because God in the New Testament, in terms of he's trying to save people, more people, to be his bride, while in the Old Testament he was just trying to preserve Israel. It's two different chapters, you know. We're trying to actually reach more people out, which means be like them, while in the Old Testament it was, don't be like them, stay away from them. But yeah, those are the two different things. So, like, in the Old Testament you could clearly see that was for Israel specifically, and that's why it doesn't apply in the New Testament. And we see God clearing it up, you know, through Peter and so forth. And it doesn't mean that for that time that law wasn't active. It was needed. But you have to, when you're reading those laws, you have to take them in the context of what they are. It's just like God was taking care of his people, you know what I mean? And clearly it's discontinued till now, but like a lot of those laws in this context were the best thing for it. And another thing was preventative. I mentioned this is a person that would rape somebody else and then would have to marry them. A man in general would be more, or men in general would be more afraid of doing horrific things like rape. Why? Because he would have to marry her. He would have to take care of her for the rest of his life. It wasn't just, oh, I get away with it. And another thing is, a lot of times rapists, like, they would get, they would literally chop their things off. It's just a different time. I don't know if it's even a different time or we're just delusional. For example, we have so much people in jail, right? In the Old Testament times, the way it was you either get hit with a stick and then you go home and you continue supporting your family, or they would literally take your life. The reason you could say why. There was the timeout, like the jail part or prison part, was just until the court case, basically. Why? Because survival was hard. Um, People sometimes barely had enough to survive themselves, get enough food to survive themselves. So why would they support somebody that is actually abusive? And this is where you have in the law of like, why have the people that got abused suffer more by having to support uh, the abuser? That's what it was. Um, so it was a sense of a punishment to take care of somebody, feed him, and so forth. But since we have so much social care, uh, we kind of forget that part. And and even today, like I still don't think it's fair. Why uh, good taxpayers have to pay for all those people that are slacking around and just sitting there in jail to get full health care, full this for that. I just I don't think it's fair at all. So like you could say somebody that got son got killed, he's now paying taxes for the killer, and that's where the justification or understanding for capital punishment comes from in the Old Testament. Um, but when you're reading the Old Testament and you take those things out of context, um, it just seems brutal. Um, but seeing events in history, I know how we think we're the special case, like today. We're not. What happened before doesn't happen today. The reality is, the news constantly proves us wrong. We're just the same as everybody else, and we make the same crazy mistake. So, I mean, with this ramble, I just want to conclude: stay healthy, stay blessed, stay motivated. I mean, I basically went over health routine, and then it went into biblical things. I think that's it.